Hello everyone. Today we are going to learn about acceptance testing, one of the most important practices in agile development. Unlike traditional testing that mainly checks whether the software works technically, acceptance testing checks whether the software actually satisfies the customer's needs. By the end of the session, you'll understand why acceptance tests are written, who writes them, and how to improve the software quality. In Agile, we don't depend on long requirement documents. Instead, requirements are converted into testable scenarios. These scenarios clearly describe what the system should do. Only a feature passes all these acceptance testing, we know that the customer requirements have been satisfied. So, acceptance tests become the proof that the user story is complete. One common problem in software development is misunderstanding requirements. Customers explain what they want in business language, while developers think in technical terms. Because of this communication gap, the final software may not meet the customer expectations. Acceptance test solves this problem by giving everyone a common and measurable understanding of the expected behavior. A requirement is actually a test. Let's take a simple login example. If the requirement says when the user enters a valid username and a password, the welcome page should appear. This is not just a requirement, it is also a test. It tells us the user's action, the expected result, and how to decide whether the feature works correctly. Since it is clearly defined, it can even be automated. Acceptance testing focuses on business value rather than the technical implementation. Unit testing checks small pieces of code, but acceptance testing checks the complete user story from the customer's perspective. The main question it answers is, has this feature delivered the value that the customer expected? If the answer is yes, then the feature is accepted. Acceptance tests are not written by a single person. Business analysts understand customer needs. QA engineers think about different testing scenarios and developers automate the test. Agile encourages all these people to work together. This collaboration ensures that the tests are both meaningful and executable. Businesses usually describe requirements in simple English because it is easy to understand. Developers, however, need precise instructions to automate the testing. If developers interpret requirements incorrectly, important expectations may be missed. Acceptance testing bridges this gap by encouraging continuous discussion between business people and the development team. This slide shows the complete workflow. First, business stakeholders define what they expect. Business analysts convert these expectations into acceptance scenarios. Then, QA engineers add boundary cases and the failure conditions. Developers automate the tests, and finally, the continuous integration system executes them whenever the code changes. Only after all the tests pass, the user story is considered complete. There are several tools that helps to automate the acceptance testing. Popular ones include Fitness, Cucumber, JBehave, and SpecFlow. These tools allow business users to describe the requirements in simple English while the developers write the automation code behind the scenes. This makes communication much easier. Acceptance testing is closely related to the behavior driven development or BDD. This focuses on describing how the software should behave rather than how it should be implemented. Before coding begins, business users, testers, and developers discuss the expected behavior. This shared understanding greatly reduces the misunderstandings later. BDD uses a very simple structure called given, when, then. Given describes the initial condition, when explains the user actions, and then specifies the expected result. For example, given the user on the login page, when valid credentials are entered, then the welcome page should appear. This format is easy for both the technical and the non-technical people to understand. In Agile, coding alone does not mean the work is finished. A user story is complete only when all the acceptance tests are written, every test passes successfully, and the expected business behavior is achieved. That's why acceptance tests become part of the definition of done. This slide summarizes the responsibility of each team member. Business analysts define customer expectations. QA engineers identify both normal and exceptional cases. Developers automate the tests, and the CI system runs them continuously. Since everyone contributes, the quality becomes the responsibility of the whole team rather than just the QA. The happy path represents the normal flow where everything works correctly. For example, entering the correct credentials should successfully log into the system, and the business analysts mainly focus on these successful scenarios because they represent the expected customer experience. QA engineers concentrate on the unhappy path, which covers the error situations. Examples includes entering the wrong credentials, leaving fields empty, using an invalid account, or facing the network problems. Testing these situations ensures that the software behaves correctly even when the users make mistakes. Changing the role of a QA. In traditional development, QA starts testing only after developers finish coding. In Agile, QA is involved from the very beginning. QA helps define the acceptance tests before coding starts, which prevents many defects instead of simply finding them later. This changes QA from quality control to quality assurance. Traditional testing often creates bottlenecks because all testing happens at the end of the development. Deadlines become difficult to meet, regression testing may be skipped, and some defects may reach the customers. Agile avoids these issues by integrating the acceptance tests throughout the development process. Agile also changes the role of the developer. Developers just don't write code, they also make sure that their code passes every acceptance test. Instead of writing the QA feedback, they continuously run the tests and immediately fix any failures. This leads to better software quality and much less rework. Finally, acceptance tests become part of the continuous integration pipeline. Every time developers commit code, use unit tests and acceptance tests run automatically. If any acceptance test fails, the build fails immediately, allowing the team to fix the problems quickly before moving forward. To summarize, acceptance tests ensures that the software delivers real business value. It improves the communication, reduces misunderstanding, support collaboration, and guarantees that every completed feature meets the customer expectations. Thank you.